Oh, hello. My name is Peter Winters of Haddock Research. This online presentation is a direct response to an Icelandic volcano which stopped my flight to England on April 15, 2010. I was due to give this presentation about challenge your assumptions on how to market your low-carbon product, 5 top tips based on international primary research at the Sustainability Live conference in Birmingham, England on April 21st. Instead, my UK-based partner James Ambler stepped up to do it. Thanks, James. And this on-demand presentation allowed us to collaborate more closely on the content. Also, quite a few delegates, especially those who lived abroad, have not been able to attend the conference, and this gives them a chance to see what they missed. So, on to the talk. At Haddock Research and Branding, we are a market research and branding agency which focuses on how to support innovation in the low-carbon economy. In this presentation, we have put together our 5 top tips for how companies can better market their low-carbon products. We have pulled these ideas together, both from our public opinion survey data we have collected in North America and the UK, and from talking about these issues with a large number of companies working in all areas of the low-carbon sector. Our goal is to challenge some of the more common assumptions that we come across and provide an alternative view based on our analysis. In summary, here are our 5 top tips for low-carbon marketing. First, think of public interest in climate change as a niche. This is about recognizing that the public are very divided when it comes to climate change, and that those who are engaged have made strong emotional ties to the subject matter. Second, companies developing low-carbon products should provide an integrated value proposition for their potential customers. This means that a low-carbon proposition should be desirable, it should offer personal benefits to the customer at the point of purchase, and it should offer reflective pleasure once they've bought it. Third, consider existing high-carbon attachments. Your new low-carbon product will be pitched against the brand equity of established high-carbon brands, and sometimes these existing attachments are very powerful. Fourth, be wary not to assume that the low-carbon consumer is the same for every industry sector. They often involve different demographics and different incentives for change. Finally, think carefully about the ideas used to communicate your low-carbon brand. Metaphors are a powerful way of doing this, and they should be targeted at particular groups. I'd first like to introduce you to the survey I just mentioned. It's a survey that is fully owned by Haddock Research, and it's called the Environmental Choices International Monitor. The idea behind it is to try and get a holistic and quantitative understanding of the public's attitudes, circumstances and behavior as it relates to climate change, and the implications that this has for the low-carbon sector. Here are some more details about the study. The information comes from a very wide-ranging and fairly lengthy questionnaire about many aspects of people's lives. We wanted to know how much people used public transport, what cars they drove, how much they flew, what types of houses they lived in, their passions and responsibilities, their awareness and usage of products, their attitudes to a range of issues, including towards climate change and much else. We were careful not to forewarn respondents about the study being really about climate change. This was to avoid self-selection bias and designed to encourage people to be more truthful in their answers. The first wave of the study was fielded in late September, early October 2008, and was conducted online amongst nationally representative samples of over 1,000 adults per country in Canada, England and the USA. The results are available in 14 different reports, with each of the section reports dedicated to addressing a particular subject. Our vision is that this Environmental Choices Monitor be run amongst larger samples in all major countries of the world. Turning to the first top tip, it is about the need to think of public interest in climate change as a niche. The reason for this tip is that looking at opinion polls, it is easy to conclude that the public is not really that interested in climate change, and that the low-carbon business opportunity is therefore limited. Here is some recent data from the US, which places dealing with global warming at the bottom of the public's list of priorities. And it's quite a long list. It comes far below the economy, jobs and terrorism. Here is some similar type of data for the UK, taken from a Department of Transport survey from January this year. We can see that from this list, Around 8% think that climate change is the most important issue facing Britain, quite a lot lower than for health, crime and immigration. But we need to remember that these questions are all about the proportion of people who are concerned about a topic. They tell us nothing about intensity of interest. Also, we should be wary of questions which ask people to choose from a list where something is the most important. Let me explain. To illustrate the point about climate change being a niche, I'm going to take a sports metaphor using data from our Environmental Choices survey. We showed respondents a long list of sports and pastimes and asked them, which of these sports and pastimes do you really enjoy doing or watching, if any? We're not thinking about sports that you don't mind watching for light entertainment, but rather these are the things that you do watch, at least occasionally, and can change the way you are feeling. The data shows that 37% of English people are passionate about football, 30% are passionate about gardening, and 20% are passionate about rugby. We can see also that only 5% of people are exclusively passionate about rugby from this list of three pastimes. Now think about the data I showed you in the previous chart about climate change. When you ask people to indicate from a long list of items which is the item they think is most important, you will likely reduce the apparent interest in the more minor interests or smaller, more niche brands. This phenomenon is known in marketing theory as double jeopardy. So if you think this means that English people are enthusiastic about football and gardening but are only moderately interested in rugby, you ought to get out more and buy tickets to a Six Nations International at Twickenham. Even if there are fewer in number, rugby supporters are still emotionally involved. And so are people about climate change. And our data shows that society is really very divided in their concern about climate change. Some people are very concerned, others less so, and others not at all. Like rugby, we should think about climate change as being a minor brand. As part of our analysis, we have created a three-way attitudinal segmentation model. We ask 5 structured attitudinal questions about climate change, and then use a statistical technique called cluster analysis on this data. Unlike some other segmentation models you may have encountered, this does not consider general green concerns or behaviors. We wanted this purely to reflect people's beliefs about climate change and what ramifications this has for low-carbon products and propositions. So let me introduce you to climate citizens, a third of the total sample set, who are most concerned about climate change. There are 2 other groups, mild greens and skeptics and uninvolved, who I'll introduce you to shortly. So all climate citizens believe that climate change is caused by human activity, that it is a serious threat, and that we should focus on changing the way we do things now to tackle the problem. So amongst climate citizens, there is some variability on how much climate change impacts on the day-to-day decisions they make in their lives, and personal interest and knowledge about climate change. However, for both of these last 2 items, climate citizens are more involved than other groups. Mild greens, as the name suggests, are those who are more moderately concerned about climate change. They will likely believe that it's caused by human activity, but alternatively might believe it generally has natural causes. See climate change as one of a number of serious threats that we face. More likely believe that climate change should be handled by balancing what we do now with managing problems even when they occur. Feel they know are reasonable about climate change, and that climate change is sometimes a consideration in their day-to-day decision making. Those least concerned about climate change are a group we have called skeptics and uninvolved. As the name suggests, this group comprises elements who are actively skeptical about climate change and those who are really not engaged on the whole issue. So in summary, although half think that the climate is changing, few think it is caused by human activity. They do not believe that climate change is a serious risk, and in fact a sizable minority really have no opinion on this issue. They do not believe that we should focus on dealing with climate change now, rather there should be a balanced approach or deal with any problems even when they occur, or that they have no opinion on this subject. Some have good knowledge about climate change, in their minds anyway, but most do not, and climate change has very little impact on the decisions they make in their lives. We can see that significant numbers of each of these groups is represented in each country. Certainly there is a greater degree of public concern about climate change in Canada than the USA, but I believe the more important point is that there is divided opinion about climate change in each country. There is also an important point in this is an important point in understanding international public opinion data about climate change. Too often the analysis compares one nationality against another, and this way of analyzing data can hide more than it can reveal. Our second tip is about providing an integrated value proposition to your target customers. First, there is the assumption that customers are only interested in functional price aspects of a product, and that environmental benefits are not really influential. We hear that quite a lot when speaking with telepresence clients, companies, for example. People's concern about climate change should help create desire for low-carbon products, but how can this be tested? The issue underlying this need is to measure causality, how to measure the importance of various factors in getting people to act in a certain way. Sometimes akin to medical randomized trials, one approach is to separate people into those who are concerned about climate change from those who are unconcerned about climate change to see if there's a difference in the test outcome. This is what we did with our environmental choices study using a statistical technique called CHADE. As part of the study, we tested consumer reactions to a simple factual description of a prototype microgeneration product. This product profile had no brand positioning, no mention of the manufacturer, and did not refer to climate change, carbon emissions, or any other environmental benefits. The dependent variable tester was being an enthusiast for the product or not, defined as those who found the product both very appealing and who indicated they would be very likely to install. For the predictor variables, we included a range of demographic variables: age, sex, region, number in household, presence of children, income, political allegiance, as well as the three-way segmentation of climate citizens, mild greens, and skeptics uninvolved. The CHADE analysis showed that the best predictor of being enthusiastic was whether someone was concerned about climate change or not. 25% of climate citizens were enthusiasts compared to 13% of everyone else. This analysis provides evidence that concern about climate change is a valuable motivator for this particular low-carbon product. It's also part of general findings from the environmental choices study that climate citizens are particularly likely to have interests and behaviors which are more low-carbon. This analysis shows that concern about climate change does make a difference. But desire for a low-carbon product is not enough. There are three integrated marketing challenges for any low-carbon value proposition. First, how well does it evoke emotional desires, especially amongst those concerned about climate change? This could be to do with how it helps the customer do good for the environment and/or its visceral aesthetic appeal. Second, how can the proposition be designed so that it makes sense to a consumer to buy? It is about satisfying the individual customer and likely to be at least in part to do with financial justification, although a creative use of other rewards might also work. Depending on the type of product and buying situation, this can be about rational argument, or it could be more about framing the customer decision in a more subconscious way. Thirdly, once the customer has bought the low-carbon product, what could be done to enhance each customer's satisfaction in this purchase? This is about a rational reflection of making a good decision, leading to emotional attachment to the brand. This is the basis of building brand equity and word-of-mouth recommendation. Companies developing low-carbon brands should be wary of charging a premium to customers for being green. The danger is that people will feel ripped off. Instead of trying to get people to pay extra to buy green, companies can often make the case that their low-carbon brand is both green and saves money. When it comes to getting people to invest in improving the energy efficiency of their home, it is usually a matter of overcoming people's reticence to pay upfront capital costs in order that they can generate savings over time. In line with behavioral economics, different versions of the value proposition, the balance between rational and emotional criteria, can be tested amongst target consumers to discover which is actually most effective in getting people to buy.